Hey everybody, the song is going to come on in a bit. I did an interview today. It's a pre-record. We're also going to play it Sunday. Because it's Easter Sunday, a lot of people might be at Mass and stuff. And so I'm going to play it tonight as well. And this is a meeting of journalistic giants. We have Jerry Roberts, who used to write for the Daily Mail in Perth. And then we have John Stapleton, who used to write for the Sydney Morning Herald. And then the Australian, and both of them together is those 65, 70 years of journalism together. And they come from a time that no longer exists. And they talk about it romantically, and then we get to talking about where we are now. Anyway, I won't do any more talking. I might not interest you, but I really loved getting these two giants together. So I'll just get it up and ready and enjoy. It goes for 2 hours because, yeah, it anyway, so it did. Enjoy it.
Chang bought a van and decked it out, showed us all, had all he needed. Could park it anywhere, free as a bird. But when he flew, he found out fast that the great outdoors is a barbed wire fence. I'm not staying here when the shit goes south, and the shit seems to be already here. I've a backpack with all my needs. Trouble is, when I dream, all I find is that the great outdoors is a barbed wire fence. I'm sure my grandfather left freedom here, unless my eyes were open when I was born. But this world has left me blind. Is that right? Mother, am I blind? I'm sure I smelled freedom once in the backwood forests of your eyes. Hide, you said, hide with me, or how else will we ever live free? There's an exodus heading out of town. Their faces are up, but their eyes are down. There's a sun that seems to be shining upside down, and around and around, upside is a barbed wire fence.
I haven't watched the whole thing. I couldn't be fucked. There's so here we are. This is the Prime Minister has given his speech to the nation yesterday, which was like basically a Tupperware salesman who couldn't find the lids. And here we are now we've got these two journalists together. So I'm just going to let Jerry Roberts here introduce himself first and what his pedigree is as a journalist, and then we'll get John to do the same, and then we'll start the questions. So, Jerry, what's your history as a journalist?
Okay, my first appearance on television, Channel 7 in Western Australia, early days of television, was in year 12 when Channel 7 had a good program. I had a program called A Young Viewpoint. It was an hour discussion with five of my schoolmates who knew we could cure the world's problems. It was organised by Darcy Farrell, who was the news editor at Channel 7. Channel 7 was part of WA newspapers, so it was a very, very powerful monopoly position in West Australian media for many years, and still is. But in the early days of television, the staff, the managerial staff and editorial staff of Channel 7 were from the West Australian and the Daily News, which is the morning newspaper, the afternoon newspaper that I worked on. But that program was compared by Frank Devine, who subsequently finished up editor of The Australian. Did you know Frank?
Yeah, I knew Frank.
Yeah. Frank did his best work when he was the WA newspaper's correspondent in Tokyo, and he covered the Lionel Rose fight with Fighting Harada. Frank actually went jogging with Lionel Rose. Now, the thought of Frank, he's a tall New Zealander, jogging is not a pretty sight. But anyway, he compared this. Yeah, Frank compared this. He would do occasional work for Channel 7, doing this sort of thing, comparing a show. And at the end of it, he asked us, he caught us. He said, well, what are you going to do, after we've cured the world's problems? What are you going to do personally? And I hummed and hawed and said, well, maybe I could sort of be a journalist. And so I eventually, at the age of 20, became a cadet reporter in the old system at Newspaper House, working for the Daily News, which was an afternoon newspaper. So we started early in the morning. And it was very good training. And I acquired fast shorthand very quickly. I think I broke the record. I was serious. I wanted to be a reporter. And I tend to use the word reporter. I prefer the word reporter. And it was a very good training. We had some very, good journalists there. A lot of talented people. But by today's standards, it was relaxed. There was a lot of, it was, we worked hard and played hard, and it was informal, and I loved it, basically. So later on, I was still a young man. I was in and out of the sort of chief of staff's office, but preferring to be on the road. And the cadet counsellor, as he was called then, this was before journalism had university courses and all this sort of stuff.
That's interesting, Sue.
It was a cadetship. You trained on the job.
He's smiling, so he must understand.
Yeah. So, and a lot of the sort of hard men and hard drinking men and women, particularly men, had started as coffee boys. So they knew the industry. It was an exciting industry. The whole building vibrated with the presses running and the linotype going, and people did have printer's ink in their veins. And we were still the dominant. You were still talking about press conferences rather than media conferences. Television was growing, but we still had the upper hand. And I was a big bloke. I mean, I still am. So our photographers used to get me to stand in front of the television cameras just to give them the shits at media conference, press conference, this sort of thing. And I did a lot of interviews at the airport. The next lecture I give on journalism is going to be called The Perfect Interview. And I'm going to talk about interviews I did at the airport. No, not just the airport. With Gough Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser, Rex Connor, in that hectic period of Australian politics, mid-1970s, early to mid-1970s.
This was the dismissal.
Yes, but leading up to the dismissal, I knew these people pretty well, and But anyway, I think it might have been about 74. The cadet councillor got me to speak to the new bunch of cadets. Took on a dozen or so cadet reporters every year. And they went off, they were trained to start with the West Australian, the Daily News, the Countryman, which was a weekly country paper, still going. It's the only paper I buy out of that lot. And the Sports Review. And it was run by a Fleet Street guy, Jim Dunbar, very good bloke, good course. And I gave these kids a lecture at the end. Well, I mean, kids, I wasn't that much older myself, but so I was able to show them half a dozen different types of stories that you write. Now, hard news, on the spot, historical features, reporting a Royal Commission, where you've got to write a lot of stuff and follow it closely, Parliament, that sort of thing. And I was able to show them my original shorthand note because we were told to keep them for legal reasons in case somebody disputed the story and said it's misquoted. So
you'd write the whole story in shorthand?
No, these were when I did the interview.
Yeah, okay, the notes you took.
Yeah, and I was sitting in the Parliament, which I spent a lot of time doing because I had fast shorthand. And I was able to show them the carbon copy of the story as I wrote it, and then the published story. And they loved it. It was a hands-on lecture. And I'd say they never forgot it. One of them was Paul McGeough. You might have known Paul, John? Sydney Morning Herald.
Oh, he's my chief of staff for some miserable years, yeah.
Yeah.
This is great, man.
I
love it.
He wasn't popular. Hamish MacDonald stayed with me in the north, and he wasn't happy about Paul McGeough anyway. But Paul was a good reporter, and but the bloke who asked me the best question was Ray Wilson. And last time I saw Ray, he was sports editor of the West Australian, looking fit and suntan, playing a lot of golf, enjoying life. But he asked me a brilliant question about why I'd use the words non-violent instead of gentle. Brilliant question, never forgotten it. I thought this coming from a kid looking at this detail, that's very promising. And I couldn't really answer it. And I can't, as a playwright, you'd probably understand this.
Yeah, that's right. Words are important.
When I started thinking about it, and Jim Dunbar sitting next to me, I said it was probably to do with the rhythm of the sentence. And but a bloody good question.
Yeah.
And as a guy who writes,
but there's a poetry to sentence.
As a guy who writes that, you would understand that.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought about it consciously.
Yeah.
So it was a brilliant question. And so that was the start of it. Later, and then I went sailing around the world, and then I worked in government, in the Department of Industrial Development. I would have seen the inside of every factory in Western Australia. So it was technical writing. I was writing about industrial processes in language that people could understand, the general reader could understand, but which could give it enough meat to people who were interested in it. Who might have been buying a machine. Yeah. So, and of course, recently, when this bloody COVID business started, which I found hard to believe, we finished up starting another newspaper, which I didn't start, but I've contributed to it all along. And one of the beautiful things about it, I think what happened, John, is that a lot of people needed something concrete to do, not just sit at home and whinge about the useless ABC and so on. So people can get involved. I mean, they can go and buy newspapers and leave them around at local shopping centres, which I do too. People were looking for, and they still are looking for something concrete to do rather than go to protest meetings and so on, where the government's not, the institutions are not going to listen to us. So we're looking around for practical things to do. That's how this newspaper started. We managed to keep it going.
Light. So people, you're talking about
the Light newspaper.
Yeah.
I was helping. I was doing some marketing for them yesterday. I haven't put it out yet, but it was just, I said to them, you should say this is the Light newspaper by the people for the people, because just people are writing for it. It's all volunteer, basically. People are printing it, people are packing it, they distribute it. It goes out. Grandmothers in country towns buy 500 copies and go around their town distributing. it's actually a really beautiful thing, you know. So we want to capture that. But John, why don't you come from? You've heard Jerry. Just I know that your background, but just tell us your background, because your background's great, and don't miss out the fact that you got down to the cross and you're partying on, and amongst all that beautiful chaos, you became a reporter, man.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I was a copy kid once too, in 1968 at the Daily Telegraph, and
That's what I was
and yeah, in those days I was the midnight to dawn copy kid. So the trick was, as long as
What's
you
a copy kid?
Well,
I
in
know you
those
two.
days-
What's a copy kid?
Well, it's completely changed because of the technology. But back then, we were just in the teleprinters. We were all printing off news from London or whatever, and you'd tear them off and take them into the editor-in-chief's office. Timid little thing, you know, scared. Big bosses, you know. So you'd take them in and then scuttle back into the room, and these things would clack all night. And you know, if the world blew up, you were meant to. Well, there was nothing you could do. The paper had already gone after about 2, so there was basically nothing to do. But the trick was that you had to be nice to the cleaners, because if they let you sleep through after 7 a.m. and the day staff came in, you'd get the sack. So you always had to be nice to the cleaners, or they would let you sleep through. And if they took a dislike to a particular copy kid, they just let him sleep through, because there really wasn't much to do after about 2. So being an earnest young thing, I'd be sitting there reading War and Peace on top of these machines. Or, you know.
What attracted you to it, though, John? What kept you in? What was the thing that drew
the
you
normal
in?
path was to go and be a journalist after you're a copy kid. And I was asked, do I want to become a journalist? I said, no, I want to go to university. And so I finished, because I'd already left home long ago. And so I finished high school by correspondence, and when I left that job, I went to university, and because I wanted to understand the world and everything about it.
What did you study?
That it's like everything else you can do. You have to jump through a series of hoops, and then you're there. And
But what did you study in university?
Philosophy and anthropology, because there was no sociology at the time, and I thought that it was really important to understand the contemporary world, so I wanted to study sociology, but they didn't have a sociology course for that. They had anthropology, so it was an element of that. So that's
good.
And I was better known in the bar than the academic corridor, so unfortunately. So it wasn't the most illustrious of academic careers, but anyway. But the one thing I got out of it really was that I'm not intimidated by people with degrees. And I would have all my life felt inferior that they knew something and I didn't know. And so, they've just jumped through a whole series of hoops. And as we can all see, never stand between an academic and a grant, whether it's vaccines or climate change or whatever, multiculturalism or, the academics will be all on grants pouring out. Look at that Inman grant and the academics that have been funded for the social media ban for under 16s, and now they're on lamenting that it's not working very well. Duh. And
Can I go back though? You did that course. What drew you back to journalism? Why did you want to be a reporter?
Well, I always just liked writing. I just was an eccentric little kid that liked to write. And, when I was 8 and 10 years old, I was sending off stories to Reader's Digest and getting endless rejection slips and all of that. But I kept, but I always liked to do it. And then I discovered that, you get published in the local university magazine. And then the first money I ever made was in 1972, and I co-won a short story competition about a particularly drunken friend of mine who was drinking himself to death. And then I discovered that writing for the rock mags and so on, Roadrunner particularly, and Ram and all those mags, that they didn't pay very much.
In those days, because you didn't have the internet so much, these other little magazines were a way to survive or a way to make some money as a journo. because they're actually looking for
Yeah,
stories.
a number of, don't ask me to name them, but I've seen that story a number of times with other journalists saying, that they basically started off in the rock mags, and because they're always desperate for copy, they don't pay very well, but you get your name out there and you get free records and free concert tickets and things like that, and it's all great fun. So it's so it was all great fun. So I did that, and then. I don't know. I started freelancing for the Fin Review. There was an art section on the Fridays. This is like early 80s. And then they were really helpful to me, actually. They really taught me how to write for newspapers and went way out of their way to help me. And I started
What was the difference? Sorry to interrupt. What was the difference between writing short stories and writing for rock mags and writing for... actually writing for journalism, actually being a reporter? What was the difference in the writing styles?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I can really articulate that, because a lot of the short stories were actually true stories. They were just vaguely fictionalized. So
okay, yeah. So you basically were doing the same thing.
My discovery really was that you could go and interview anyone you wanted to. So, like I interviewed Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22, and Norman.
No way, man.
Sort of people. Anthony Burgess, he wrote this huge.
What was he? Just slow down a bit, because I want to talk to him about golf. What was it like interviewing the author of Catch-22? What was he like as a person?
Oh, well, by this time I'd wised up. I was living in London, and, being from Australia, you'd always be put in at 9 a.m. It was easy. All you do is ring up the PR person and go, I write for the equivalent of I wrote for the Fin Review, and I said, I write for the Australian equivalent of the Financial Times, and I'd like to interview Dirk Bogart or whoever. And they would go, oh, yes, we'll put, yes, he has a spot at 9 a.m. And sooner or later I realised I was only getting put in at 9 a.m. for because I was from Australia and wasn't a very significant player in London. And then so Joseph Heller rang up the PR person and said, I want to interview Joseph. They're always available when they're flogging product. So they used flogging some doll book it was. But anyway, and I said, oh, haven't you got any other time? Nobody wants to be interviewed at 9 a.m. And she sort of laughed and said, well, I can relate to that. And she said, look, he's booked solid. The only spot he's got is at lunchtime. And I went, oh, yeah, I'll have it. Said, so I ended up going to lunch with Joseph Heller in a very very elegant restaurant in the middle of London. And he couldn't have been more charming, He just
wow.
Erudite and charming and nice to me because I was young and from Australia, and they all think Australia is very exotic, And
and
he,
like Australians.
Yeah, Salman Rushdie. I interviewed Salman Rushdie in the same house he wrote.
Good, that's great.
You just you could access all these people just because.
Do you think Salman Rushdie was someone who liked to write just to sort of poke the bear? Because I heard his second book was going to be Buddha, the Big Fat Pig. But I just always wanted to do that joke. But what was he like? Was he scared of what was coming? Was he?
Yeah, he was a guy that liked to write. So I'm sitting there interviewing him, and the only other book he'd written before Midnight's Children was a thing called Grimes, I think it was called, and it was a science fiction book which sold almost zero. He was a very wealthy man, so already, and lived in this absolutely gorgeous 4-story. The maid opens the door and this sort of thing. And we're all from Australia. We're all living in squats with zero money, And that was very grand to me. But he was completely charming, and interviewed him, and he pointed to the house that's the centre of Midnight's Children, and which he had a picture of, and he said, and he was very nice. And he rang up the PR person afterwards and said, "That's the best interview I've ever done." And I thought, it was great. He was great. He was really fascinating. He was one of those people that really liked to write, and he just won, the Booker Prize and everything else.
Yeah.
He said, "John, do you think anyone reading that book would think it would be success, like a runaway success, like it's been? And I went, no. And he said, no, I never thought that either. I'm just sitting here on my own, had one more or less flop of a book, you know, it sold a couple of 100 copies and that's it. And I wrote this book, and then bang, he became world famous. And he was one of those people who just loved to write. And
Can I just take a pause there, though? And just because we've got the two journalists here, what was it like interviewing Gough Whitlam? I just want to have a mix because
I just sent you a picture of me with Gough too.
Yeah. What was it like interviewing Gough?
I'll not just Gough. I mean, I knew Gough from a way back, just through the family. He first had dinner with us in early 1960s when he was deputy leader of the opposition.
Okay.
And the nice thing about Gough, and when he died, a lot of people commented on this. John might remember, he was very good with family relationships. Every time I saw him, even if it was just for a few minutes, he always asked after my dad.
Wow.
And a lot of people remember that. It was a nice thing about Gough. He remembered who you were, who you were in your family and so on. I liked him, but I had the same experience that John's had. When you're meeting people at the top of the game, like Joseph Heller and Salman Rushdie, and you're a young reporter, you know, fuck all. But they are absolutely charming.
Yeah,
almost invariably. The people and you know,
I've sent you a picture of me with Gough, talking to Gough.
Great! I'll incorporate him when I put it together.
He was good fun too.
Yeah,
he wasn't. He was often taking the piss.
Yeah.
And
but that was our cultural identity.
Yeah, it should be. It should be, and it should be sort of innate.
Yeah,
in reporters,
100%.
We're supposed to. We should be a bit against.
Well, he's got it.
We should be a bit against the government and bolshy and cheeky. You sort of have to be if you've got to put your foot in the door and get the story.
Yeah.
And without being, there are times when you have to back off with tragic situations. But by and large, you do need to be a bit of a pain in the ass, and we were, and I think they've sort of gone respectable. And they've even gone sober, I think, which is which is you know, but a lot of these interviews were at the airport. Malcolm Fraser was at the airport. My favourite interview ever was with Rex Connor, RFX Connor. You know, so I had a trifecta. You've got Whitlam, Fraser, and Connor were the most controversial, and Kerr, Sir John Kerr. I don't know if anybody. I never interviewed Sir John Kerr. I don't think he would have said much. He'd signed so many secret agreements. He'd probably forgotten them all. But those three guys were the centre of the action for the dismissal. And Rex Connor there'd been a change of government in Western Australia to a Liberal government, and he was public enemy number one because he wanted to use the Northwest Gas for Australia. Yeah. And the Conservative governments wanted to flog it off. And they won. But there was a propaganda machine against bloody RFX Connor. He was called, they always had to put an adjective. He was ogreish or this sort of thing. Oh, I see. And he came off the plane. He's a huge man. He would have been 25 stone, that sort of bloke. Big, beefy, heavy built. And he was with Frank Crean, who was Simon Crean's dad, who was the treasurer at that stage, I think, of the Whitlam government. They came off this, we met them we were on the tarmac, you know, we didn't have all the security stuff. And off they came off the plane in the double-breasted suits and hats, straight out of bloody Doc Everett's 1950s labor. It was just fantastic. And I had time. I had time for it. It was morning. I had time. We sat down at in the airport lounge, and here he was, this ogre, and I had the most delightful conversation with him and with Frank, and I wrote a sympathetic story, which was front page on the Daily News, which was against the bloody propaganda. Yeah. And the next morning, Tony Wharton, the West Australian's political writer, shot my stories to pieces on the front page of the West Australian. And And a couple of weeks later, he went to work for the government. So that's and so nothing. There's nothing new.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like to suggest that we were paragons in the old days of virtue and fair play and you know, the establishment media always sort of supports the establishment.
Yeah.
But what's happened lately on the COVID thing, it's hostile.
Can we get to that in a sec? We're slightly young, and then we're just hearing people who've met these legends of Australian history, you know. But what was when you met Gough Whitlam? What was that like, John?
I was always busy. There were always things going on, so it was at press conferences and things like that. But I regret. I wanted to get him a photograph of my children, and he agreed to do it. But I was a bit distracted at the time and didn't push through and get the picture of Gough with my children, which would have been great, you know, because he was a hero to our generation. Many people think he destroyed Australia with all.
Why was he a hero to your generation? Because we only hear the propaganda that. Why was he a hero to your generation?
Well, the story as we simplistically understood it was that he saved us from the draft to Vietnam and got us out of Vietnam, which is not entirely accurate. It's basically we were leaving anyway. But we attributed that to him and to the whole multicultural thing. We all loved that, and the whole, you know, being open to gay or bisexual or whatever. We all loved that. It all just seemed so wonderfully progressive, you know. And the last thing anyone of my generation wanted to be was a conservative, you know. So, you know, he
was a visionary.
Well.
You look back, he seems to be a
conclusion. He's the man that created the family court, one of the most disruptive, ostensibly corrupt and hideous institutions ever created in this country, which no politicians ever had the guts to undo. And it's created havoc across the country. And you will find one bloke after another disillusioned bloke whose life's been destroyed by that disgusting institution. So he did a lot of enormous harm. The absolute flood of immigrants that you're getting now, which has destroyed any core cultural identity in the country, all began with Gough and is now being accelerated out of all control and creating enormous infrastructure problems and identity problems and all sorts of issues. So a lot of the stuff that he championed has gone bad, you know, the whole feminist thing that was so wonderful now, you know, the Femocrats, as they're called, of Canberra, you know, have enacted policies which are essentially destructive to any normal family formation. So there's been all sorts of things which have totally backfired.
What about and this is to both of you, that like there's a lot of people in the movement say it was Gough and Hawke that changed the Constitution without a referendum. Was that true, or is that just a myth that's come back from there, where they removed the Queen and they removed the Queen, put the Queen of Australia? There's all this conjecture that they changed the Constitution without a referendum. Is that true? Did you guys notice that?
An answer to that, do you, Jerry?
No, and it's been quite a. You would have struck it in it's quite a significant thing within the freedom movement. The people who like this guy has just been shot.
Des Freeman.
Yeah, I haven't bought into it, and we've really sort of kept it out of the paper too. Because I don't think we're dealing with a technical problem now. I don't know about that constitutional point, and I don't think it matters.
But surely, if it did, it would have been big news. It would have been hard to hide that they're changing the Constitution without a referendum. Surely, somewhere it would raise some alarms, and so that's what makes me think: did it happen? Because
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that.
All right, well, let's go.
I can tell you a story about paradigms of virtue.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll get on to the question. Go ahead.
So, I'm at the Sydney Morning Herald. This is in the mid '80s, 1980s, and I've gone on staff, and I'm getting a great run. One front page after the other, or getting a really good run. And I've just been on some trip around the place and come back, and you got $100 a day to be out of the office. My brain was in overdrive, so. Back, and I'm just sitting there typing, another story, concentrating, and this really senior journalist there comes up to me and blooms down at me and goes, "Mate," like he really wanted to have a go, "Mate, under no circumstances, literally, mate, under no circumstances do you ever give back a single cent of your expenses, or you'll make us all look bad."
Can I this is my question to both of you now. In your period, when you're writing your front page things, and when he's doing the same, did the community respect you? They found out you were reporters for the paper.
Really admired profession. Jerry know this too. It was a really admired profession. You were looked up to, particularly on the Sydney Morning Herald, which was the Bible of the chattering classes back then. You were really, and everybody wanted to know you. Everybody was curious about the inner workings of the paper, and it literally was the Bible of the chattering classes. Everybody read it. It was a sign that you were, in touch and intelligent and blah blah blah. And when I went to the Australian, all the accolades died straight off. Nobody
yourself, you were respected.
I don't recall that. Maybe I don't think that way. Maybe I don't care. But I remember when the Australian started. It was exciting. It was a big deal. Bob Duffield, West Australian. You would have known Bob. Great guy.
No.
Oh, great guy, great journalist. And he went across the Australian to start it. And George Williams was also recruited from our staff. So in those early days, and Whitlam was backing, Murdoch was backing Whitlam. But it was the old technology. They had to fly the thing out every night.
Oh.
It was a quite a difficult production process. And Bob Duffield was a terrific journalist in all aspects, including the production side of it, the headlines and all that sort of stuff. He gave a series of courses back in Perth. He used to drink a fair bit, which was the done thing in those days. And he was a great one for talking about the Cold War, but also he gave some detailed courses in production, in the editing and layout of papers and so on, which I never really knew much about, and regret that I didn't go along. I tended to stay on the reporting writing side, and we used to sort of disparagingly say that sub-editors were just there because they couldn't write. And but it was a high employment industry.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people on staff, on production, on reporting, editing, advertising.
So this was the rivers of gold they talk about.
Well, yeah,
because the advertising revenue meant there was money.
Yes, the big those like Saturday morning
a lot of money.
Sydney Morning Herald classified ads on a Saturday morning. Same with the Age, the West Australian. We're a license to make money.
Yeah,
that's gone.
So here is the thing now that I wanted to get that out the way, and it's really fun. But when both of you now don't want to work for the MSN, and reporters aren't revered anymore. In fact, I just had a man sort of just a bit older than me looking at my bus asking about it. He's going to come and do an interview because he's worked in the biolabs, and he says the media's gone. He doesn't trust absolutely any of them. How do you think? How do you think we've reached here where so many of the public now just does not trust journalists? Do you think it's just COVID, or was it
one thing relating to the war, for instance? So the standard joke was that at the time Rupert Murdoch owned of the Iraq War, he owned 347 newspapers, if I've got the figure right, and 346 of them editorialized in favor of the Iraq War. And the only one that editorialized against it was the New Guinea Highlands Times. And the joke was that they didn't get the smoke signals, you know. So you look at the Murdoch media in the war, you know, I mean, it's a war is very likely to, you know, could well trigger nuclear war and could well be the end of American empire and is creating chaos across the world. And there's the Murdoch empire, rahing for it, raising not a sliver of doubt.
So he really had power to go, we're not doing that story, we're doing this. He'd actually influence his power, or was that just the culture of the paper to favour the government?
It's the censorship, if you call it that, is in story selection. So there's, you know, say there's 100 stories every day. You pick 50 or 20 or whatever it is. And so they'll tell you to go off and do a story. They're not going to cancel the story. They just don't run it. So they're not running a whole range of stories that are raising doubts about this Trump's behaviour and the bombing of Iran and the thousands of dead and the chaos across the Middle East and so on and so forth. So that's where it comes in. So it's power. And he appoints the editors that do his bidding. That was the whole thing of guarantee, you know, when he bought the Wall Street Journal for a massive amount of money, the whole guarantee was that there would be no editorial interference, which of course there wasn't. He just sacked the editor and put his own one in. Bang, job done. And those editors are very well paid, millions of dollars a year to do his bidding.
Yeah, I haven't been closely involved. At one stage, I was going to take up to be the West Australian correspondent of the Australian in the fairly early days. That would have been still in the 1970s. And I'm glad I didn't. So I've never actually met Murdoch personally. And I remember a little, you know, a humorous piece that Frank Devine wrote about the impossibility of not working for Rupert Murdoch somewhere along the line. I never have, so I'm a Murdoch virgin. But that does appear to be how it's done. You don't have to directly be telling your editors every day what they're going to store. They know what you want.
They know what you want.
Yeah, you know, and the people start. The worst thing is self-censorship, of course, when you stop.
And it's also, you know, look at the Murdoch, we'll look at all their coverage of the vaccines and the absolute lack of coverage of the damage that they did. And nothing else compares to that level of censorship. And it's all just driven by the advertising. It's just driven by the dollar. They can't, you know, plus the Murdoch empire is heavily invested in vaccines, so they're not going to run They're happy to run anti-lockdown stories because it makes the Labor government look bad. But anything on vaccines, you won't see a whisper of it anywhere in the papers. Nothing. And we all know there's one story after another.
Yeah, I just did one yesterday. I've got another one. We've got another 3 coming up. Did you meet Murdoch?
I got stuck in the lift with his son one morning when I was really hungover, really dishevelled at 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm stuck there, and he's got all the grace, money, and charm that money can play, you know. And there I am, looking my absolute worst.
I wrote a story, a piece. I wrote a bit about Murdoch at one stage, you know, and I've got an archive on Pearls and Irritations with John Menadue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nice guy, but entirely accepted the narrative on COVID and climate change, but good on other issues, been good on the Middle East. And he worked for Murdoch before Whitlam, I think, and then he went to Whitlam to be Under Secretary of the Prime Minister's Department, and then stayed on for Fraser. But so he knew Murdoch at that time when he was starting the Australian, and it was an exciting time in Australian journalism to have a national newspaper. And before.
Oh, so that was the thing. See, so the thing with the Australian, the plan was to have a national newspaper.
Well, yeah, which we hadn't had before, and with the old technology, I mean, they were Bob. I remember Bob talking about on a cold, windy morning, they're waiting for a bloody plane to come into Canberra with all the stuff to be off and printed. It it was an exciting time.
Yeah.
And there were good people working for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bob Duffield, terrific guy, and a true blue journalist of the highest caliber. Adrian Deemer was working there too. I didn't know him personally, but John.
Yeah, he was he was a great lawyer. He was the legal. We're talking about a guy, aren't we? Lawyer, and he was brilliant, like completely brilliant. So one time I write this story which exposes this psych in Sydney, who was a very famous psych in Sydney, and he's called Twitch. His nickname was. I got the right bloke. Argentina, maybe. Anyway, this particular lawyer.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my jobs too, of course, to check stories with our lawyers.
All right. Yeah.
The top lawyer in Perth, retained by the company, for libel.
Yeah.
Because the board of directors don't like paying out libel cases, and with the old technology, see, you couldn't just go back on your computer and take out a word or two. It's there in lead, ready to go, and we got a sort of last minute hoy from the lawyer saying this is dangerous, and the presses are about to roll.
Wow.
And so I raced downstairs to what was known as the Stone, and the bloke in charge of me, he's in it's all open, and these craftsmen are working away on their linotype machines. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Boom, click, 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 click. And everybody really knows what they're doing. These guys know their trade. And here's the bloke in charge in the middle of the Stone, where he's a bit elevated and he can see everything. And I said, we're in the shit here, big time. And it's cool as a cucumber. I mean, the bloody presses are ready to go, ready to pump off 100,000 newspapers. And cool as a cucumber. And I said, we can get away with it if we just drop that word. So I got a hammer and chisel, bang, and said they won't be able to read that. It'll just be a smudge. Just as cool as a cucumber, like he was, having a cup of tea in the garden and a smoke, and it was, and that's a happy memory of working with people who just know their trade.
That is great.
Yeah.
Well, what about the advent when computers came in? How did that? And another question, John. Did the Australian reach out to you because you were doing so well at the Sydney Morning Herald to come to the Australian, or did you feel like a change?
Oh, they were having another one of those, what do they call them, the Soviet style, get rid of everybody moves at Fairfax.
A purge.
A purge.
It's another word for the purge beyond purges that Stalin used to do. They say he was preparing for one of them just before he got killed or died or whatever. The big change with the digital was that the newsrooms went silent. That, this interaction between the... Yeah, people smoking at their desks and overflowing ashtrays and passionate debates about every bloody thing because they're all social justice warriors before everybody had heard of one.
Was that the same? Was that right?
Yeah, shit, yeah, good fun. We weren't always sober.
You went always sober. Is that the same? So you're drunk having these great... It sounds incredible. Yeah.
I think it produced a better product though.
They could bloody well drink. My God. They'd show up at 11 a.m. for the news conference at 11, and then by 12 they're all off at the pub again. The senior editors of the whole thing were all pissheads. Just unbelievable. It was. I'll tell you one thing.
We went to the Palace Hotel bar at 11 o'clock in the morning at the end of the first deadline for the Air Edition. And the leader of the push was Jungle Jim, who was the chief sub. And as a cub reporter, I was a bit scared of him. He was the old school, came up as a coffee boy and really knew his trade. And then he sort of stepped sideways to have life a bit easier. He was a sports editor. And he was a great guy. And but he a heavy drinker. And his doctor told him, if you go on drinking, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so he started taking bets that he could get off the piss. None of us thought he could. So he piled up these bets. And he went to 11s from then on. drank Clayton's tonic, got fat, and laughed at us, So, but the 11s was such a good session for the newspaper guys that everybody in town wanted to come along too. And Norm O'Neill, the great cricketer, when he was in Perth, would come along. And there was Bill Beecham was a regular. He was a film critic and so on. And it was just a warm, happy, just like a pub should be. It was bloody lovely. The barmaids liked it. Everyone liked it. And then you had to go back and
work.
do some more for the next edition.
Save the world while you're drunk.
Gee, yeah.
Does that resonate with you, John?
There was a pub just near the old Fairfax building on Broadway, and there was the paper decided, it was heading into it was the 80s, and suddenly everyone was green and environmental, so they decided, we better get an environment writer. The Farmers Federation was so desperately to try and get their view across, they bought shares in Fairfax. But anyway, so they named the local beer garden the Glasgow Gardens after Joe Glasgow, because he was a grand old man with, straight after the news conference, off for a whiskey and cigarettes. And some very bright young greenie shows up at my desk one day, desperate to get some, some environment story in the paper. Earnest, bright, clean-cut young thing. And I go, oh, yeah, I'll introduce you to the environment writer. So I dragged this poor kid over to the pub, sitting in front of this, living legend, wreathed in cigarettes and whiskey. You see the guy's eyes just going, oh, my God. The environment writer. And Joe had stumbled back from the pub about 4 o'clock, bash out his story and go back to the pub.
So can I ask, it seems pretty evident. So when the computers came in, and then after them, that's like the same time when the internet was starting, was this really the death knell for newspapers, even if it was a slow burn? Was this what it was, that, there was too much competition, people were advertising less, there was less money? What happened? How did we get from, because that sounds exciting. No offense, it'd be fun to just be there. But now here we are. And, we've had some of the most shit reporting. You told me once, I asked Jerry, I said, look, I'm writing these things, but I don't know how to do balance. He said, you are the balance. This way, you are the balance.
Yeah.
Just do what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And I've done it ever since,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. Your two aspects, you're looking for information, so you might want as many sources of information as you can get. And then you have to present it. If you're writing it in language people can understand, if you're doing video and audio, just get a bit of a format going so you're organizing your material. But that's the job.
Yeah.
It's quite simple.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're not doing it. And look at I'm an old man, obviously, but not all my colleagues who were reporting in the 70s and even 60s are dead. Where are they? Playing bowls in Mandurah or something, I suppose.
Well, that's what you said, John. You said you have sort of a gaggle of really well-known writers or really accomplished writers who are just really not doing much,
Where were they?
They're not doing much, and they've all rallied around the Whitlam progressive sort of kind of view of the world, and when that doesn't fit, they cling to things that just don't make sense anymore. So I don't know. It's just
so like the stuck in story. They just haven't grown because the world at the moment. Look where we are in Australia now. Our Prime Minister came up yesterday with an address to the nation. All of Australia walked in, and it's like I think I said to you before, in the porn industry, it's called a premature ejaculation because fucking nothing happened. We're like, what? And
what a staggering bullshit that was. That was just like I was watching Harvey and what's his name? Rukshan's podcast on it, and they were just like, well, what are we going to do now? They booked in for hours of staunch debate, and it was just what a crock. I don't know who advised him to do that. It's a softening up process, probably, for worse to come. Yeah. But it was just, why would you do that?
Do you think that when you But when you see these politicians now, like Dan Andrews, Jacinta, your guys here, McGowan, what's the new one you got?
Roger Cook.
Roger Cook.
He was
the guy who was a gunner, who looked like an ice addict. No offense. We never saw journalists really attacking them, really challenging them. It's very rare you see it. Now sometimes you see it in the politicians. How did we get to hear that the journalists...
The corporatisation of news and the sense of news has been a long story, slow in the making. So there's a book back in the 1990s called Flat Earth News that talks about the corporatisation of news, how the spin merchants took over so they become product and they're flogging politicians. And all the sort of small newspapers, most of them have died off. So you don't get the Daily Mayhem, and then you don't get that channel of great talent going to the major newspapers in the cities, and it's just corporatisation. It's just, and nobody's got the time anymore. You know, if you're a young journalist now, you're expected to churn out 3 or 4 stories a day. At the end of my mainstream career, I was considered lazy because I point blank refused to do more than 1 story a day. So anyone can copy and paste a story. That's all the Canberra Gallery does most of the time. But, you know, you hired me because I could write stories. I'm not going to write 1 a day. It's
fair enough, man.
It's shocking. You're just regurgitating crap that you fed.
Yeah. So, and because you're regurgitating it, I guess you're not challenging the sources because you're taking for granted the other reporter's already done that.
No, I'll let Jerry talk. The one I remember I did this story. The government proudly announced that they were now monitoring eBay for anybody who might be on a pension or something and was selling a speedboat or something. Anyone that was selling something that you know, they shouldn't be on eBay. So I asked the question, well, how many staff have you employed, and what is it going to cost you to survey everybody's Facebook and eBay pages and everything to make sure they're not selling an asset that you do and they're not entitled to have that cash. Because, you know, they're impoverished and on a pension. So I'd simply ask the question, you know, how much is this going to cost? Are you spending more money than you're collecting, and is this really worth it? And the PR woman at the other end was just really quite indignant. She said, but we've issued a press release. Right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And these are my questions. And in the old days, when you rang up, the PR people, they were really keen to help you because they saw themselves as part of a democratic function. That the fourth estate was a really important element in Australian democracy. And Kate McGregor, for instance, was a great press secretary, and she would always make sure you had everything. They would make sure that all your needs were met. You had the information, the questions, everything. They saw it as a serious function of democracy. Now, of course, it's just...
It's the same thing in the government, in Parliament. When I worked in the Department of Industrial Development, writing speeches and press releases and so on, and promoting local manufacturing, which I remain interested in, so I think it's important. When a question was asked in Parliament by a member of Parliament to the minister, we took it very seriously. You know, the whole department jumped to attention. The parliamentary process was respected. It's treated with contempt now by government. You know, they just give a Dorothy Dix or you know, basically tell people to get stuffed, and they're limiting question time. So the whole Parliament has been brought into disrepute the same way as the media have been. I think, yeah.
Well, let me put, because you're both on our side, let me put, if you were sitting down with the head of, say, the TGA or APRA, what are some of the questions you'd like to ask them that journalists just don't ask them of our age?
How come you are still there? How come you haven't been abolished? You know, how is it possible that you could be so crooked and still exist?
Yeah, as I was telling you, I mean, I think Australia is outstanding. It's 97% or something funded by industry.
Yeah.
That goes back to my sort of pet hobby of on this whole neoliberal thing that you just the government no longer has to do anything, and you
Yeah.
put it out of the market, and people govern themselves, and which is obviously a disaster. And so we're in a vacuum now.
Yeah.
That's run out of steam. Even the economists are realizing that that's not working, but there's nothing in no alternative really. And what's the alternative to American capitalism, which is also blown up? It's financialized. It's making money instead of making products, and that's why the Chinese are running rings around all of us. But with the TGA, this is, I was telling you yesterday, I want to interview Rainer Fulmich.
Yeah.
Who's in a German prison.
Yeah. I've done him twice.
Have you spoken?
Yeah, I've interviewed Rainer twice.
Have
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Before he went to jail.
Yeah.
But so I've been tied up the last couple of years with this geopolitical situation. But what the hell's going on between Russia, China, United States, the City of London, BlackRock, and so on is doing my head in. So I'm going to get back to the COVID-19 story, to three legal aspects of it. The aspect of it in the West Australian Parliament where legislation was put into place 10 years ago, 10 years before it all started, even further, which actually made it very hard for our judges and magistrates to overturn the mandates. So it was pre-planned.
Wow.
The second aspect is Aaron Seery. Have you come across Aaron Seery, the American lawyer who's written a book called Vaccine?
He works for Highwire. He's the one that challenged. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's so that takes us back to that 1987 Reagan legislation, which gives immunity to prosecution against vaccines. I mean, if the Ford Motor Company makes a truck with a lousy brakes and kills someone, they get sued out of it. But if the vaccine kills 1 million people, But Reiner reckons that if you prove intent, you can get around. So there are three aspects to this.
Oh, so if you can prove that they knew it would kill someone.
Intent to harm, you override that 1987. That's what I want to talk to him about.
And he's in jail.
He's in jail. He's in jail because they know bloody well he's a damn good lawyer. And he'll legislate. He'll take their socks off.
Can I just have an injection? When I met him, this is how I met him. So I'm in Portland, and I put out a call to interview him, and suddenly I get a call and say, "Yeah, he can be interviewed in half an hour." I'm like, "What the fuck? You kidding me?" I'm like, "What?" And so I was running around Portland and Victoria trying to find anywhere with Wi-Fi, and I found this pub, and they let me at the back of there, and I'm setting up my computer and this, and then I'm going to interview Ryan. I'm thinking, I've got no questions, I've got nothing. I'm fucking but he was, like you said, charming, gracious. At one point, my internet went down. I'm like fucking crazy to get back on because I've been kicked off, and he's still there. And he was talking to another guy that we had on, a lawyer, and he was just so lovely. That really astounded me. I was nothing. I was a guy in the small country town.
In jail. What's the charge? I don't quite understand.
They reckon that what they reckon is that he was getting lots of money coming in, and he basically took away some of the money. Basically, pocketed some of the money to pay off something. I personally, when I met him, I thought, well, from the work you've done, you're obviously loaded. And I didn't get any of that across from him. I judge people as I met them. I thought this was a really brave, wonderful, determined man, and he was absolutely fixated on rooting out this evil, and the evil consumed him.
Let's get back to information.
Sure, sorry. Just my little bragging spot.
Don Lipscomb was a West Australian financial journalist, sort of a little bit older than us, but he had a newsletter, Western Insurance Report, and Don used to say that there are about 5 people in any town who know what's happening.
Oh wow!
So your job is to find those 5 guys and develop a relationship with them. But this was the going COVID, and it's happening again with the ABC, Channel 7. The establishment media. I did an interview with you, nearly 4 years ago.
Yes, you did, yeah.
And you raised the ABC
Yeah.
Why the ABC? You know, four corners. You sort of expected something better.
At least a debate.
But so Rainer Fuhlbeck and his German Corona Committee were one of my best sources. They did about 5 or 6 interviews every Friday night German time.
Yeah, that's right.
They improved their English translations with the whole range, the top scientists, doctors, people of the coalface, undertakers. They were all there. They could have been interviewed on Late Night Live on the bloody ABC. To this day, and that gets back to the TGA, all this information was available. You know, from the Robert Malone invented the bloody technology and warned us against it.
Yeah.
And
Same with the PCR test.
Mike Yeadon was vice president of safety for Pfizer. He was warning, still warning us against it. So these guys have been censored. So we're dealing with something very serious.
Yeah.
As far as the mainstream media.
It is amazing that the backlash has been so minimal, really, for what is now broadly accepted right around the world as a fraud and one of the worst medical scandal in history. A mate of mine just got another shot. You know, just talking to her. Oh yes, I'm up to date with my boosters, and you think, what the heck? You know, it's just well known all around the world as a fraud, and a very, very profitable fraud, of which the Australian government was part of. And why is there?
Can I tell you what? Sorry, finish, Don.
I think it's because people have learned to distrust the media, so nobody's watching the media. They've become news averse, and it's a very news averse population. Most people, you know, I mentioned to someone yesterday, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is giving us, you know, an address to the nation last night, and I said, "Oh, is he still in power? Is he?" You know, like people just don't follow it at all. You know, and
No, they don't.
They just don't. You know, I went down the last election and go, you know, down to my local cafe where there's some real movers and shakers in the area, you know, running big businesses and so on. Go, well, we've got a new Prime Minister. Oh, who is it now? You know, like, they don't care. Whoever they are, they're going to rip you off.
Can I tell you what was interesting? When we were going around with the first tour and interviewing people town to town, Channel 9 actually put out a statement that they were going to get a bus and get some reporters on there, and they were going to go town to town to interview people about their COVID experience. And we were thinking, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder if they've been inspired by what we're doing. But we just used to put the mic and we never edited anything. And my joke was saying their interview will just be cut, 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 and just nothing. But we were in Albany. We came, that's when I met you. And we went down to Albany. We'd reached out to, there was a guy called Dr. Nino, who's a cardiologist from South Australia. He loves Big Pharma. And I said, well, look, come on, we'll have a debate. I couldn't get any doctors to come on for a debate except for Dr. William Bay, who became very controversial. And he and I basically had this debate. I was in a storeroom in Albany with all these people behind me in the dark watching. As far as I know, that was the first debate between a pro-doctor and an anti-doctor, and it's me in a storeroom in Adelaide. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I thought, why isn't this the ABC doing this? And that's why I thought, we don't have debates on climate change. We don't have debates on anything. You know, this seems to be the strange thing.
It really is. It's malevolent.
Yeah.
In fact, that first story I wrote for the first newspaper. Our malevolent mass media.
Yeah.
And why? How can they live with themselves?
Well, that's my thing.
These newsreaders, you could chip rocks on their faces, these bloody bitches, and spitting out anti-vaxxer. And that's another story I wrote, because anti-vaxxer is good hate speech. You get that double X.
He's got the double X.
Anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
And
if there's two Fs, it wouldn't
climate
work.
denier is not nearly as good. It's too many syllables. So that you can't really spit that one out. I was at the shrine where they did the shooting at Rukshan Court. I was arrested there. And there was a reporter there called Paul something. He's got a bald head. And he's still working in Melbourne. And he was
Didn't they just announce his retirement? Ugly little
Oh, well,
moment.
that's a blessing for the society, because he was the one that broke the story that we, the protesters, were urinating on the shrine. And that's what they used against us. But when I met him in the street, I was going down the street, he was doing a report on a burnt building, and I stopped my bus and I walked over to have a chat. And I said to him, I was very calm, and Kelly filmed some of it. I said, you broke the story about the pissing on the shrine. I said, did you physically see anyone doing it? And he went, no. I said, well, where did you get the information from? He goes, the CEO of the RSL saw it on the CCTV camera. I said, well, so you saw that footage? He said, no. I said, so, and the RSL never released it. He said, no. I said, so you had two stories to report on. One, which you didn't see any evidence of, and you went with that we were pissing on the shrine. But why didn't you do any story about the police shooting protesters as they're running away from the shrine, shooting protesters? And he went, I didn't see it. I go, oh, he didn't see that because we saw it, because we had cameras everywhere filming it.
He was too scared to get close.
And I said to him, I said, you know, not only were you there, but there was like 50 or 60 professional photographers there who weren't on our side. They were just there for a historic shot to try sell it. All the cops had body cams. The cops also had two teams of things just filming everything. We had all our phones, and Rukshan and a few other streamers were streaming everything. None of them have any footage of anyone urinating on the shrine. But we have footage of the police, and it's a treasonous act. This is not an illegal act. This is an act of treason against the people. The police commissioner, or one of the acting police commissioners in Melbourne, came out with the Black Lives Matter march in the height of COVID, before any vaccines, and said, people are allowed to protest. It's not illegal. It's a human right. And the police got down on their knees and saying, at the Black Lives Matter, they would never do police violence again. And then a few weeks later, they're shooting Australians, grandmothers, grandfathers, young people in the back, running away with their freedom signs and stuff like this. We had our heads beaten in on the steps, the group of us that were on the steps, and seriously beaten in. One of them was smashing me down onto the ground with his shield, like I had 6 on me, and smashing me down like this. And he's going, stop making me do this. Stop making it. And the third time I said, I'm not making you do it. I can't really do anything. But the thing was, he would have seen all that. This is a reporter that's just retired. He would have seen all that. And he clearly decided to run with the story the government wanted. And it was the same with the pepper spraying of Mary. We have the footage of the cops doing it.
Yeah,
and the media went with, oh, it's a man dressed up. We know it's not a man dressed up. We have the footage. I met her. We have footage of her as a woman. She might have not have been the most attractive woman. She might have been a big woman.
She was about my age, wasn't she? I think so.
Yeah, but she was a woman. You know what I mean? And there's lies, and all the lies, and the media was a part of all these lies, pushing all these lies. And the worst of all, this is what made me start becoming, okay, I just started Cafe Lockdown. But when this incident happened, that's when I thought, that's it, I'm committed to this now. There was an armoured car, which is on the side of my bus. And I'll put a picture of this up when I put this together. And they was covered in gorillas, and there was 4 or 5 SUVs behind it, full of stormtrooper cops. And they were just shooting the protesters in King Street in the city as they came up. No questions, no anything, just there, shoot them like this. And that's where I got shot.
Stay together! Girls, stay together!
And I came, and all these people running, and I'll play the footage in this interview when I record it. All these footage running. Then you see the armored car. But I came across a Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10, a reporter, a female one, doing a live. She's got a mask on, The cameraman's got the camera on her, and I'm begging them. I showed them my wound. I said, I'm begging them, look, they're shooting. The kids are shooting people. They're shooting people. They would not turn the camera to film the armored car. Instead, she was shivering, her hand was shivering, and the cameraman was crying. There was tears down his face. Anybody with 1% journalism in them would have gone, fuck my job. That's historic. That's history. I'm going to film it or I'm going to record it. And they didn't. And when I got home last night, they were calling us anti-vaxxers, rednecks, even Nazis. I'm thinking, we're the Nazis. We're the Nazis. You've got an armored car shooting unarmed civilians who would just have questions for the government they're not allowed to ask, and we're the Nazis. And that's when I realized journalism was dead. And all my respect for journalists.
Have you thought about interviewing that guy that got locked up with the hate speech laws for 45-second speech at some rally? I think he's in Perth. You met him?
I haven't met him, but there's a young girl. There's a lot of people going to jail for hate speech laws now, I hear. They're just, or being challenged. There's another, the girl who's become a sensation had a sign on a thing from the river to the sea, which is now illegal to say those words, that phrase. I don't know if that phrase is illegal or displayed as illegal. And now they're fucking up because it's one of John Farnham's biggest hits. And they're saying that you could get arrested for singing that song. And so they're blanking out. Yeah. And so people are using it as graffiti now. How could we, and surely this is what journalists are about. Journalists are supposed to, one of their main jobs is to try stop this, is to try hold the government to account.
Well, they haven't, have they?
To a point where words
the ABC hasn't. It's all government control. News Limited is completely government, in bed with the government. Fairfax, ABC, they own the ABC. 1.2 billion, that gets me. Imagine if you gave $1 million to the top 1,200 outlets, left, right, you guys, everybody. The top 1,200, just rank them from top to bottom, and according to viewership, gave them each $1 million. Then you would have a really vibrant and chaotic, but vibrant media. Instead, we put 1.2 billion into a corporate basket case called the ABC, who does nothing but parrot government lines, government propaganda. And when did they, government-funded journalists interview government-funded experts? It's just the most tedious non-event.
So the question is, in this modern world, what is the relevance of journalists or mainstream journalists? If we've had all these terrible things happen to us, they've ignored them. And it's only recently Current Affair did a story on a vaccine injured person. We got hospitals full of vaccine injured people. I met a guy today just out the bus. He's going to come and do an interview. He said his best friend is dying. An oyster farmer in New South Wales. He's on his last legs, killed by the vaccine. No one cares. I said, I'll do his story if he comes on. But no one's caring about this. It's huge crimes, and they just gloss over it. And the only word they use, they don't debate, it's just vitriol. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. Oh, you're a climate change, transphobe, Islamophobe, or, what's the other one with the Jews? Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic, yeah. If you criticise Israel, it's the going back to the politics.
I'll just finish that question though. For the both of you, do you look upon the modern journalism with despair and wonder what the fuck they're doing, or how they live with themselves, or do you think this is just how it is?
Oh, it's lost. Is anybody reading the Australian anymore? I don't think so. Not that I know. I don't know anybody that reads it anymore.
Quite expensive too, right?
Sorry?
You don't even know. He says it's quite expensive, but he doesn't even know because he doesn't buy it. That's even hilarious.
Yeah, well, Sydney Morning Herald, it used to be part of everybody's day, was that you would check the newspapers in the morning, or a sign of what sort of person you are, whether you read the Daily Telegraph and were a commoner, a hero of the common man sort of thing, or the Telegraph, or the Australian, which was... you're a super toff, or the Sydney Morning Herald, which you were very Turramurra, very doctor's wife sort of thing, but all of that's just gone. Nobody's reading them. So they've lost massive readership. The Sydney Morning Herald used to be something like 700,000 copies. Now it's down to, I don't know what it is, 120 or something. The Australian only sells 100,000, 120,000 a day or something. It's not and I don't think anybody's reading it really. They're just sort of stacked up their figures by dumping them in hotels and things like that at the airport.
Well, that gives us some hope. People can vote with their feet. They don't have to watch the ABC. They don't have to watch Channel 7, and they can watch you instead.
Well, this is the interesting thing. But what we're working, John and I do. This is on Sunday morning now. We're doing this, and they're being well received. And all we're doing is talking and asking questions and chatting. But do you think the lesson of this is that you can't trust corporate media? If you want to have true journalism in the country, like surely, what are your before I go there? What are your thoughts? What is the purpose of journalism? What is the core, the number one foundational purpose of journalism in the country?
We used to have these arguments as cub reporters. What's it about? Is it to inform or to entertain? And I think you have to have some entertainment. You don't want to. We were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you don't want to be boring, but I think it's essentially to inform people about what's going on. And when I went into journalism, my dad, who was a brilliant guy, Oxford scholar and so on, said, and I was 20 years old. He said, just don't fall into the trap of thinking that the world is something that goes around every 24 hours, according to your deadlines, for your information, for your entertainment. And that's very good advice. And that's my advice which I'll be giving in my next lecture. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about your big mouth, your big ego, your list of questions you get from your local neighborhood think wank. It's about the story. It's about the story. It's about trying to work out and trying to find out what the hell's going on. And if you're not able to work it out, at least try to be accurate.
Sorry, I'm still giggling at think wank.
well, and that's what they do.
I know, I get it, but
they got a list of 20 questions which they get from the International Affairs Institute or something, and ask all these tough questions to some politician who doesn't know anything anyway, and he's been told what he's not allowed to say. That's the other side of things. My observation of today's younger politicians in the major parties, especially the Labor Party, is that they're ambitious and they're opportunistic. And they don't know a damn thing even about the history of their own political parties. And that's the worst sort of person you really have in the parliament. You don't want people who are personally ambitious. You want people who are interested in the country and their communities. And then there are decent people, and I met them personally at the last election campaigning, who are serious, but they say they're family values and the church and Christianity, which is wishy-washy and doesn't deal with the complexity of what we're dealing with. So we're not really much use. So that's a combination of these upwardly mobile young politicians don't know any history. Even Albanese should know the history. He should know the history of his own party, the Labor Party, with ASIO. But ASIO just pulled it right over him with that synagogue fire and so on in Sydney, and they're getting more funding as a result. And what's happening now? And they sacked so they sent off the Iranian ambassador, pissed him off, as if the bloody Iranians would be having starting a damn fire at a Sydney synagogue. They wouldn't even know where it is. And they've got synagogues in Tehran. It was just anyway, won't go into ASIO and the Mossad right now. We don't need to get you shot just yet. But our newspaper right now is a subject of academic study. The Light Australia is being studied by a PhD candidate at Deakin University in the Faculty of the Arts and Education, in a sort of subheading of something or other media and the digital media of the age and so on, under a professor. So the supervisor for the PhD is Professor Hess, something or other Hess woman, and I haven't been approached yet. They go to the advertisers because they can get their phone numbers and so on, but But this is where it's starting now, and I don't know much about it. But reporters don't start as copy boys and cub reporters like we used to in the 60s and 70s, and going back through the centuries, or going back, if you want to see what it was like, look at those old Humphrey Bogart films.
Yeah.
The reporters, they got hats, they smoke, they drink too much, the newsroom's chaotic, and people are screaming, and the old typewriters are clapping away, and they're having fights with the editor about getting their stories in, and the police commissioners around the place somewhere, and the mayor, and that was the atmosphere. But now it's all sort of pre-planned, I think. But so it starts with these kids going in to study journalism at Deakin University or wherever, in the Faculty of Arts and Education, under a professor, and she has a grant through the government, ARC it's called, and she's associated with the ABC. And they're looking at the Light Australia, because it's a fair subject for a PhD. How does here we're going back to a printed newspaper. There are 3.5 million copies of it out and about at the community level. I hope it's not a hatchet job. We naturally expect it will be.
It will be.
Right wing extremist.
That's right.
Don't believe the climate story, and don't believe the COVID story.
When I look at the three of us, I just think Nazis. We just all look like retired Nazis. So I get it.
So it's starting with these. It's starting with we started on the job, and which is not necessarily all the good thing either. But it's starting as a school, and then the graduates will go looking for a job somewhere, I suppose, with the ABC and there are not a whole lot of jobs going.
There's a very interesting podcast at the moment, I think it went up today, between Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson on this exact question, how the whole power in the media has shifted to podcasters, and they were saying, well, why has this happened? And it's not. And the answer they came up with, and they've got squillions of followers, millions of followers anyway, and the answer that they came up with was authenticity, that people, after the absolute fakery of from the Iraq war on and the COVID era and everything, where it was patently obvious they were lying, that people seek authenticity. And so they might not agree with everybody that you interview, but you come across as authentic. So that's what people are seeking, and that's why the whole podcast realm has taken off, because they're basically, the mainstream media has destroyed itself and destroyed its own credibility. And I think there's a fair bit of truth to that.
Sorry, finish. Yeah, I was just going to say,
because they're looking for the same authenticity, I think.
Look at here in Australia, we got Avi, who people love or hate, but he's always there. Topher is just, he's there. People love him. And there's others too coming out. There's a whole bevy of new podcasts that's coming out. From my bus, so I've just got a Starlink. I mean, we're just sitting in this. If you saw where we were sitting now, this is the illustrious. This is I don't know. That camera's
That's
not
exactly right too. That's that point they were making too. Is it's in technology, but that's enabled.
But just to finish though, so I live in the bus, but now I'm a war refugee because the price of fuel. But I haven't checked this month, but the last few months we reach 6 to 6.5 million people every 28 days for nothing, literally nothing. We live on nothing. And Topher does the same. I know he's got some money coming in, and they're always looking for how they can fund themselves. But I think you can't expect them to get corporate sponsorship. If someone starts sponsoring Topher, they're going to want him to lean or have some bias. So I think the lesson of this era is to the people of Australia: if you want journalists to do their job, you're going to have to fund them yourselves, because you can't have them funded by the government or funded by corporations, because they're just going to make them biased and lie to you. If you want real, and I don't profess that I know the truth. All I'm doing is me and all these other podcasters, we're calling out the bullshit as we see it, and we're searching for the truth. And I think there's an exodus of Australians who are leaving the lies and trying to escape the fog, and actually, you know, they want to know. And so anyone who's like what you're doing, John, when we do Sunday mornings, all of us are basically just at the forefront of this search of Australians and probably worldwide people looking for the truth. What's happened to our world? Why are we here? Why is everything so shit and upside down? You know what? Nothing seems to make sense anymore, and that's what we're looking for. And basically, that's why I said Carl Stevanovic coming to do podcasts was a huge win for our community, because I'm not going to see Jerry on Channel 9 going, oh, I wish I'd taken the jab and trusted the science. Here, can I have it now? I'll take all 10 to catch up. Never going to fucking happen. And yet the podcasters are fighting back against $1 trillion propaganda machine with webcams and their mobile phones and just a hunger for the truth. And they're winning. That's Carl has actually come to our side. They've blinked. He's searching to get, maybe, I don't know if he's authentic or not, but he's searching. He's coming to our side to just be seen as a journalist, because he knows in that world, he's just seen as a cog in this propaganda machine.
It's also
What's that?
It's also simply technology, that you don't need a studio anymore. You don't need millions of dollars. In the old days, as Jerry would know, to produce a newspaper was a remarkably complex operation. It was a daily miracle. As things ever appeared, you know, with the whole building shaking, with the printers starting up and all that romance that was associated with it. But amazingly complex operation to put out a newspaper. And now I can just rattle up something and, you know, put it out like on the net. You know, it's a complete.
You got to write it. Write it in my voice. Pretend I wrote it.
Yes, thank you. You can do that.
Yeah.
The positive thing about newspaper, when our people in Perth decided to go ahead with a newspaper, and they were asking my advice because I was the only newspaper man there, protesting every day, making speeches at Government House, I said, no, nobody reads newspapers anymore. So I advised them against it, but they didn't pay any attention to me, fortunately. And but the where it fits in is that once it's printed and out and about, it's too late to censor it. You can't shadow ban it. It's there. It's in black and white. And I buy 1,000 of them for $220. I bought 2,000 yesterday. I've got them in my car, and I'll be leaving them at various places in the wheat belt and shops and stores and so on, and op shop in Northam. And I leave them where people are sitting down reading, where they've got time. Like we're waiting for a bus station, coffee shops, cafes. And I'm glad they went ahead with it, because it's even if half of them finish up in the bin, it's there that you can see the banner, and it's people can take it home. I mean, what's not to like about a free newspaper? So it turns out that
by the people, for the people.
It turns out that the newspaper industry isn't dead.
No, maybe it's rebirthing.
Well, yeah. So
just to
I see
it. Are you distributed? Do you?
Yeah,
some days I do deliveries for the local newspaper here in Kiama called The Bugle, which I write for sometimes. And, you know, it was always adversarial. It wasn't used to anybody being, and you'd drop them around to the local shops, and, you know, the IGA, 1,000 of them are gone within a day. And people go, oh, we love The Bugle, you know. And this is all like, you know, I was like, what? I never, not used to such a response.
It hangs around. It's there.
Yeah, people love it, the local newspaper.
I live on the road. I see the light newspaper everywhere. I remember I was in this tiny little cafe in this Victorian town, and a woman comes in and says, can I leave my newspaper here? And the woman looks across, and I said to Kel, I said, I bet that's the light. And when she turned around and she saw me, she's like, oh my God, Michael Griffith. And I was just saying, yeah, you know, this is it. This is the beauty. So the corporations have sort of killed mainstream media. No one cares about it. And yet the people now are delivering this. I've met loads of people in country towns that go, oh yeah, we get 100 or 1,000 and we deliver it around the town. And so this is it here, the Lighthouse Australia.com. If you want to do this, just get in touch, and it's really cheap. and they go in laundromats, cafes, they hand them out in the street. And when people come up, they say, look, it's just the truth. We're searching for the truth. And it's free.
I think those subscription walls that are on most of the News Limited, a lot of the Fairfax publications now, is also a huge blocker. I mean, is anyone under 50 going to pay a subscription to the Daily Telegraph? I don't think so. Is anyone under 50 going to pay for a subscription to the Australian, which is deadly dull on a good day? I don't think so. You know, talk about waging ancient cultural wars, my God. So, you know, nobody's paying for these subscriptions. I think it's killing off. I think it's one of the factors that's killed off their relevance and their importance. You know,
well, and the Cafe Lockdown has subscribers if you want to subscribe, but we have no stuff just for subscribers. Everything's free. Because what I thought was, well, we've got to produce stuff at a certain level that people go, okay, I'm willing to pay for that. I'm willing to support that. I like it. So we have, I think there's, I don't know, it's about 8,000 subscribers on Substack, but there's probably about 250 that pay. The rest is consumed for free. Sometimes they complain. I feel like saying, well, get your money back.
I think
but there's other things too. There's, you know, there's people subscribe here or there. People buy merch. People sometimes give donations, and we're grateful for all of that because we love what we're doing. But we understand. There's a few people who have advertised this with us here and there, but we understand. We truly understand if we get taken up by Coke or the government or anyone else, then we are going to be compromised. And we like being free. We like having our own voice. We like being able to swear, and we just don't want to be told what to do anymore. We just feel that there has to be someone challenging or documenting the stories that MSN refuses to document.
The other aspect of what we're doing is it gives people something active they can do rather than just sit down and bitch about the garbage on the ABC. They can buy some papers and go and pass them around and get active. Take an active role so you're not just a passive victim of the machine.
Actually, I have one more big question for you guys. How much censorship did you guys experience in your time as journalists? That's what.
For me, it was all about story selection. Like they wouldn't. You know, if I had been a bonnet about the family court and what a disgrace it was, and but they just. Apart from they did run a couple of stories, but basically they won't run. So you're not going to get those stories into the paper. So in reverse order, for instance, I got more hate mail on climate change than anything else ever in my life. All hate mail because, you know, I had young kids at home. The editor, one of the editors would come up and just say, "Can you bash it?" There's this guy who says, you know, the poles aren't melting like they keep claiming they are, and this scientist said this, and ring the Climate Council and see what they say as well, and just bash it out and go home. So I'd just regurgitate the scientist and get a comment from the Climate Council. Now you're only talking to us to try and look neutral, and who cares? So, but you know, it would absolutely inflame the public who were all staunch, and a whole army of government-funded, you know, people telling you that you're an idiot and didn't know what you're doing. So it was kind of that sort of thing. But,
I could tell you a story here, Michael. Maybe I shouldn't. It'll go on a little while. You know? Are you all right for time?
Yeah, go.
I mean, firstly, in my time, this is going back to the 70s and even later 60s, it was very hard to get anything published in Western Australia about the Aboriginal issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I outsmarted them on one time. Don McLeod, the great man in the Northwest, was bad-mouthed by a Roman Catholic priest in Port Hedland, and we carried that story from our reporter in Port Hedland. But it was before I went to Port Hedland, and I got in lucky. I had all the facts, and I went in the Weekend News. It was edited by a very good technical journalist, Bill Lang. He did a really nice job with the page. in the weekend news, but he was not ideological at all. And I think it was because of the weekend news. Nobody had really had time at a higher level, probably didn't even see it.
Yeah.
And so it was not censored. And it was a rare victory.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was really people. And of course, the people in the story, the Aboriginal group, because they've been censored for 50 years. And, for all that, they were pleased as punch. It was a triumph. It was a triumph. But I was just lucky that I snuck it in. I think when the hierarchy wasn't aware that it was happening, and the bloke who handled it was technically good. He was technically good. The obituary I wrote on Don McLeod for the Australian was handled by a bloke who's still there, I think. I saw and he was a very good journalist who edited it. I was really happy working with him. It was just delightful. And he picked me up on something that I hadn't covered, and so it's there.
Yeah,
it's there. You know, I gave it to a young ABC reporter in Port Hedland last year. So that's there in the Australian, and I'll give you the story. This will be a bit naughty for some people, but in Perth, throughout a good deal of the 20th century, I suppose, there were two major pillars of the establishment. They were the hitmen, the mafia for the establishment. There was West Australian Limited newspapers in St George's Terrace that pumped out the West Australian paper of record, still going, over 100 years. Similar, Sydney Morning Herald area of respectability about it. And further down the road, around the corner, was the Swan Brewery, which was these were both monopolies essentially. Who the West promised that they could get the paper over the fence all around Western Australia every bloody day, and they did, because they had a transport company. It was all, and it made a lot of money, like the Sydney Morning Herald with those classified ads. So it was very powerful, and it controlled the political story, the propaganda side of it. And the Swan Brewery had a monopoly too, and a gentleman's agreement with Carlton United. And they owned pubs. So they were enormously wealthy, both of these organisations, heaps of cash flow, very dominant cash flow. So the situation was that the West Australian kept the population's heads full of shit, and the Swan Brewery kept their stomachs full of piss. So it was a large version of the mushroom treatment. And the third pillar of the establishment was the university campus at Crawley, which was also a monopoly. And that sort of trained the officer class to keep everything in line. And Perth is the most isolated city, capital city on earth. And everybody who lives in Perth knows that it's the best place on earth. It's got with the best footballs, best beer, best bloody beaches. So if you come to Perth, you'll soon be. Well, you come from Perth, so you know that. It's so much better than anywhere else on earth. So it's tightly controlled, and this is right through until. In fact, this hasn't changed all that much. It's more complicated because there are more, universities and so on. So one day, as a young reporter, I wrote a story that was critical of the Swan Brewery. It wasn't page one. And all hell broke loose.
Wow.
The paper was, but before the paper was on the streets with my story in it, I was pulled in, and it said, "You're going to have to go and see Mr. Cohen, who's the general manager, managing director of the Swan Brewery."
Oh, shit.
So, and I was trying to figure this out because the paper was not on the streets. And I thought maybe he's got a spy somewhere in the subs room who's dobbed me in that there's let him know, just ring him up. So we've got a problem here. And it was a minor matter. It wasn't a huge scandal or anything. And this is my education as a young reporter. So I go down the road to only a few hundred meters down the road to his office in Mill Street. Ushered in, little bloke behind desk, little old bloke, Jeff Cohen. and he called me Chappie. Just shat on me, treated me like a piece of shit, you know. And I was a young man. I wanted to strangle him, of course. I wanted to punch his bloody nose in. And so off I went. And the story was, I don't know what the story, but so that was the first edition newspaper. So I would have done what most young blokes do, you know, go to the pub and have a few beers and discuss the state of affairs. And it wasn't until later, you know, sometime later, that I figured out what had happened. As part of the upper echelon of the establishment, as it was then, between the managing director of the West Australian newspapers, Jim McCartney, Jeff Cohen of the Swan Brewery, with their huge cash flows, their dominant financial, political, propaganda, health hold over the West Australian population, most of which was in Perth, still is. But they own pubs all over the state. They own them freehold, and they screwed the publicans. And the West screwed people too, you know, through their advertising and distribution and so on. How the hell did this all happen so fast? And it occurred to me that as part of the normal, everyday activity, the top of the brewery, got hot copies of the newspapers. And when you have a hot copy, it's directly off the press, because when you're rolling off the paper at high speed, it's wet. The print is wet. The ink is wet. It goes over a gas flame at speed, and every now and then it'll stop, and the whole thing catches fire. And so this is what John was saying. It's a exciting business, you know. It's everything. It's never a dull moment, and there were so many people involved. So he was getting a hot copy. So he had the copy before it was on the street. And here he is, and this is another thing you find when you go into government. You would think that the Premier of the state or whatever would have more important things to worry about than what's in the bloody newspaper. But on the contrary, that's the first item in cabinet. They are worried about their image, about what's happened, what he said about them. And here's the boss of the brewery, this huge business, reading a hot copy of the Daily News and shitting on me and calling me Chappie. God, Chappie, the complete disdain. So naturally, I wanted to kill Jeff Cohen as a young bloke. And this is the positive side of the story. Jeff Cohen had a beautiful Halverson launch 34-footer from the days of beautiful wooden power boats made by the Halversons in Sydney, and raw freshwater, a very modest boat by today's Gin Palace, you know, multi-story stink boats. And he had a mooring for this boat at Marjorie Bay at Rottnest. Rottnest is 12 miles offshore from Fremantle. And every city has a place like Rottnest, has a bay like Marjorie Bay where the in crowd have a mooring. Mm-hmm. And my uncle Bill had a Halverson 36, and I went to Rottnest with him for a few days once, maybe over Easter, and we were moored next to Dolphin, which is Jeff Cohen's boat, this 34-footer. And all the time we were there, I used to watch his wife, Mrs. Cohen, sitting on the stern sheets with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, cleaning fish for hours. And I thought, well, a bloke who's got a boat like that and a wife like that can't be all bad. That's the moral of the story. And that's how establishments work now than ever. It's more serious now because of the transnational capital and
well, can I talk just briefly about the censorship that the podcast has faced? There's a great reporter here called Natasha. Is it Broadstock or something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's Natasha. Anyway, you might know Natasha Broadster. God, I'm getting in trouble for not remembering her name. Anyway, she told me that she was on X. She got to 5,000. I think it was reaching 5 million people a month. That's what she was reaching, and that was going to make her. Then she could monetize her page. But as soon as she said she was getting like 1,000 subscribers every couple of days. And then as soon as she got close or hit 5 million viewers, it closed down. Even though this when Elon bought it, suddenly she was getting no reach at all. She went from that to a couple of 100,000. We had the same. And I work with Dr. Paul Oosterhouse. We were watching our numbers like this, and suddenly it's boom, and it's nothing. Facebook banned us, our major page with 100,000 people, 10-year ban. Alison Beveridge, who writes for The Light as well. We interviewed her recently. She's a great reporter. She does another job now because she doesn't want to work for the machine, and a great reporter. And these are the censorships that we're seeing. Some get away with it. Topher doesn't seem to be bothered by it, so I think he must tread the line well. But a lot of the rest of us, completely. I even have a FOI from E. Karen saying that, yes, we are censoring you, but we're not obligated to tell you who buy because it's a third party. And they didn't say who's the third party.
It's just
but let me guess. And so this is what we're facing, but we're still gathering an audience. We're still growing. And not just me, all podcasters are still growing. So the censorship isn't stopping us. And instead, they're trying to bring out hate speech laws to silence us. And MSN is exempt from them. So it's really not a fair playing field.
How is that guy going to jail for a 45-second speech? Basically got up and said the Jewish lobby is the most dangerous lobby in Australia, which is a widespread, both in Australia and in America now, with the whole Iran war hotting up, and a lot of the world saying, America's doing it on behalf of Israel and Netanyahu. So that's a really widespread and pretty common damn view. And how much anti-Semitism can you fit into 45 seconds? I don't think very much. And 1 year in jail. What the heck? And
my friend Damien Richardson might go to jail because he started Cafe, or not started, he came on very early with Cafe Lockdown Me. We were doing shows every night, and he was at some gathering and he just raised his hand. I call it changing light bulbs. And he said, now you can get arrested for this. Someone took a photo of him and he might go to jail too for that because the police have come back wanting to increase the charges.
That was at a rally or a
no, he was just invited to a speech at a gathering somewhere, and he just said, this is ridiculous, you can get arrested for that. But this is where we're happening now. Joel Davis, the NSM boys, I believe he's been in jail over a year now, no charges, in isolation. I'm not even sure he's done a crime.
In Australia?
Yeah, he's in Melbourne. We have political prisoners now, and they're all hidden away, you don't know. And we have whistleblowers come out, and the whistleblowers end up in jail, like David McBride. They end up in jail themselves, and even say the police in Melbourne that we have videos of them brutalizing people, totally out of order, and none of them have ever been charged. I don't even think they've lost their jobs. And this is what we're seeing, and I think one of the reasons we're seeing this is that the journalists from the other side are letting the country down by not living up to their duty, which is to hold the government to account.
And the police and the judges and the doctors, the whole thing's rotten. And we have I've been invited to a couple of things like wheat belt meetings. There's at Muresk and at Wongan Hills where we have regular meetings for white people. They're all focusing on health at the moment. How to sort of grow your own veggies and how to at least keep well in this period where the whole society's under stress. So we're still standing at the end of it. So it's just going back to real basics as far as physical and mental health. But also politically, I think the same thing applies. I thought it was a great pity that Pauline got on board with Gina. She's been flying around with Gina. So Gina's been organising a hedge fund for her, and you've got these One Nation people talking about joining up with the coalition. So they just become another part of the Uniparty. So she loses her credibility, and she's always had courage, which I've admired, but does stupid things. So we're, you know, you're quite. We were talking about this yesterday, Michael. We're a resistance. That first interview I did with you, I was using that with the resistance, and you said, "Fancy, we're talking about this in Australia, but we are a resistance. We're still above ground. I mean, there are some people who are sort of planning to go underground if they have to. I think you and I are too far above ground to be disappear from view.
Same with him.
Yeah. So we're and at my age it doesn't matter anyway. But it's kind of hard for young people.
I remember this, John. Just after the shooting of the shrine, I was there. There was quite a rich business owner in Melbourne who was there too. And he called me up and said, "Look, I'm getting a little meeting of people together." And the meeting actually went nowhere. But I had to sneak there through the lockdowns on my motorbike, get to here, look for cops. Finally, I got into this back room of a restaurant, and we're all hidden away. And they're all talking with their ideas. And I was sitting there watching it. And then I said, "This is a resistance meeting."
Yeah.
And we're in Australia. And it just hit me that this is what it was. And it's been that way ever since. But it was really a turning point. We were realizing this is where we are. And one of the things that's causing it is a fear of the government. And when we say people are awake or people aren't awake, I'm beginning to think it's not that people are awake, it's that some people aren't scared of the truth and want to know what's happening on, even if they don't know it. But other people are going, we're moving into a world of lies now. And the truth is dangerous. I don't want to know the truth. I could lose my job. That could endanger my house. I wouldn't say happy, but I've secretly agreed to partake in the lies just to keep myself safe. So those ones that are with the lies because the government has all the money to pay their mortgage, we don't have anything. And then there's a group in the community, and a lot of it is mature people. I think that's because, you know, either they've paid off mortgages or they don't give a shit anymore. And we're sort of interested in the truth of how did we get here, where we have this great country, all these resources, and the rest of the world's going, why aren't you billionaires from your resources? And we're sitting on oceans of fuel and our bowsers are running empty. And one of the reasons we've reached here and are still going down, in my opinion, is that the journalists like you guys have been sidelined or lost. And now we just have propaganda artists. You know, and no one believes them.
Australia has long been known as the least free of all Western democracies without a Bill of Rights or anything else. So Margaret Stone, who was a former Director General of Security and Intelligence here, which is the oversight body for the agencies, she, in her farewell speech, said basically gone too far. In Australia, you can be jailed for 5 years for breaching an order that you didn't know existed. I mean, there is essentially no freedom. So it's we don't have in the Constitution or anything else the right to free speech or the right to, they're always talking about the implied right of political expression, but it never flies or doesn't seem to fly when it hits the higher courts. So it's just like we're a democracy in name only, basically. And democracy in name only.
Extraordinary statement. As the writer for the Light now, and you're covered, you're like a beacon, you're like a walking poster for the Light newspaper.
Well, yeah, thanks, Michael.
What do you think where's the hope going forward? Do you think it's the resurgence of podcasts?
Look, I've never had any hope. I started investigating this COVID story 6 years ago, exactly, April 2020. The first name that appears in my diary that month is Luc Montagnier, the French.
Yeah, that's who woke me up.
So that tells me that's when I was starting to get stuck into it.
Yeah.
And I was immediately struck by just how organised the bad guys are. They every T had been crossed, every I had been dotted. They controlled the high ground. They bought off everyone, is what it boils down to, in every institution. So I never had any hope, but by God, I'm enjoying the fight, and so are you. Let's face it. Let's face it. It's not a bad way to spend your old age, getting stuck into a fight. And
this is a Lighthouse newspaper. Jolly good. You better put up a link. We've done 2 hours, guys, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I'm going to wrap it up now. That's why I was going it in. Anything you want to say, John, to take us out?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. You could ask me about my worst ever day in journalism or something, some anecdote to go out on.
We probably should go out. Well, okay, let's go on a hope thing. What was one of the times when you thought happening in life, rather than negative, go positive, where you thought, wow, I'm a journalist and I'm enjoying being a journalist. This is a great day. There's some moment that you really thought, yeah, I'm where I'm meant to be, doing what I'm meant to be doing.
No, but it does remind me, right at the end of my career, we had this thing where we were all getting training for, how to be a journalist. It was a weird thing, how to behave on the road and, like those sex education things they do, in the office, that sort of thing. So this was a whole thing about how to be a journalist. And I'm like, well into my 50s by this stage. And so they're staging these, and it was just ridiculous. And, but anyway, you had to do it. And so they staged this thing where the whole town doesn't want to talk to you. They all hate journalists. Their local hero has died. And what do you do? And I just went, oh, for Christ's sake, that's easy. You had to act it out, right? So I said, oh, Christ, that's easy. You just walk into the local pub. You look really depressed. Make sure you're really badly dressed. Mumble, sit at the bar, down a schooner without talking to anyone, staring at the this, mate, he just mumbles, he says, oh, this is fucked, mate. This is fucked. Down another schooner. Halfway through, you just look at the other guy and say, this is fucked. I've been sent from the office to do this effing story and nobody will talk to me, and it's, don't suppose you'd talk to me, I'll buy you and you mumble. You've got to mumble. And I go, don't suppose you'd do it, I'll buy you a carton of beer and a carton of cigarettes. And he goes, and you can see the guy go, really? Could we do it out in the beer garden where no one will see us? And I go, yeah, I just need somebody to say something. And they said, oh, I'm a mate, you buy him a carton too? He said, yeah, mate, it's all on expenses. I don't give a fuck. And that goes, yeah, okay. So you go out the big garden, local hero, much loved by the community. The allegations were all false. He died in a terrible accident, and we're so sad, and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, he did a bit of this and that, mate, and had a bit of colourful life in and out of the big house, and, did a bit of whatever. But, yeah, off you go, bang. And go back in the pub, sit there. The minute the guy realises that, you've got exactly what you want, and thanks very much, you're out the fucking door into the car and off back into the back to Sydney. Bang, you've got the story,
Well, I can't wait to. So this guy, it'll be Sunday morning. I can't wait to post this. This I think it's going to be great. So I'll get it ready and start marketing and go there. But I'll pause it there. But thanks, man. Seriously, man, thanks. I wish I could. Honestly, it's great to hear from you both. And you both, I hate to say it, you're both walking museums of a time when I think it's a time that a lot of us would like to get back to. Yeah. All right. I'll leave it there. So share it, Australia. Share it around if you want. Download it, share it.
And
when I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them, he said. I tried turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry. Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and she has been riding my tram. Now it's late and she's trying to sleep. And out the front, a sign read all but sold. A sign read all but sold. And we all owe so much money, but to who